Hello, hello. Welcome back to the P2P Soap Box Season 4. Well, I'm your host and P2P BFF, Marcie Maxwell. With Peer-to-Peer Forum 25 in our rearview mirror, we are eager to continue bringing you great stories from the P2P industry through another great podcast season. And we have the perfect guest to help us launch Season 4. Back when peer-to-peer fundraising was just getting started, most nonprofits put all of their energy into one big event, usually a walk or a cycling program, and it made sense. Focusing on a single large-scale event made it easier to line up your staffing, your branding, your resources, and create something with broad general market appeal. But as the space has grown and changed, so have our supporters' expectations. These days, there's a real need to mix things up, to diversify your portfolio, not just add to reach new audiences, but to keep those longtime supporters engaged too. Now, of course, adding new events to your lineup is not without its challenges, especially if you don't have a clear plan. But when it's done thoughtfully, with solid internal alignment, a unified brand, and strong teamwork, expanding your portfolio can really unlock all kinds of new opportunities. And it's a great way to drive innovation, deepen engagement, and spark real growth for your organization. So today we have a remarkable guest who has expanded his organization's peer-to-peer portfolio while still staying aligned on that strategy, brand, and teamwork. I am thrilled to introduce Steve Merker, Vice President of Corporate and Community Partnerships at the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation, Canada's leading cancer fundraising organization, and also the 2025 Peer-to-Peer Professional Forum Organization of the Year. The foundation is dedicated to raising funds for Princess Margaret Cancer Center, one of the world's leading cancer research and treatment centers, known for its breakthrough discoveries that transform patient outcomes. It is also home to five of the top 30 fundraising programs in Canada. The Northern Pass to Conquer Cancer at number 30, Journey to Conquer Cancer at number 29, Road Hockey to Conquer Cancer at number 18, very Canadian, Walk to Conquer Cancer at number 15, and Canada's largest cycling event, the Ride to Conquer Cancer at number 3. Today, we are talking about how the team at Princess Margaret grew their peer-to-peer lineup from just 2 events to 8. We're going to dig into what sparked that expansion, the challenges that came with it, and how they've kept things on track with smart strategy, a strong brand, and solid teamwork. We'll also get into how they keep their team aligned and try to avoid those classic turf wars, how they ease concerns about cannibalizing programs, and create a sense of connection across events, while still letting each one shine in its own way. So let's get into it, and let's give a warm welcome to the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation's Steve Merker. Steve, welcome to the P2P Soap Box. So happy to have you.
Marcie, I am so honored to be here. Season 4, episode 1. What a great opportunity for us.
Absolutely. Steve, you have been on my podcast hit list for a while now. So let's just start a little bit with your story. Can you share a little bit about just your personal journey, your professional journey that led you to your role at Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation? And I'm just going to be honest, for our American listeners who may not be as familiar with the organization, can you give us just the quick overview of the foundation?
Absolutely. So the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation raises crucial funds for our cancer research program at the Princess Margaret. And Princess Margaret is Canada's premier cancer research center. And in fact, Newsweek magazine, so your American listeners will certainly know Newsweek, Princess Margaret was ranked number 11 in the entire world in terms of specialized hospitals. But of course, we are much more than a hospital because we're a cancer research center. And when we make discoveries, we share it far and wide. We actually are recipients of funds from the National Institute of Health from the U.S. So I don't know if it's still true, but Donald Trump was signing off on checks coming up to Canada because we have one of the most robust clinical trials program here at the Princess Margaret. And that has to do with our healthcare system and the diversity of our patients also. And so Princess Margaret is really a world leader in research. And so we have to be world leaders in fundraising at the Princess Margaret. And we actually, fun fact, in terms of share of wallet, we raise more money than any other cancer organization in Canada. So we even out fundraise the Canadian Cancer Society. So in the US, that would be the equivalent of MD Anderson raising more money for cancer than the American Cancer Society.
Those are
Right.
fighting
So,
words, Steve. You're throwing down
yeah.
the gauntlet.
Well, we're really proud that people are investing in the Princess Margaret and they're placing their funds, their philanthropic funds, and they trust us to make changes in cancer outcomes in the future. So so we're really proud of that fact. And then back to your original question about me and my personal journey. So I've always been sort of into sports and athletics and then business development. And I started sort of in my events career putting on 24-hour mountain bike races all over North America, including 8 across the US. And had a great time doing that, but it wasn't for a charity. It was just for fun. And we put on these wonderful races. After 7 years of doing that and traveling all over the place, I went over to the Ontario Cycling Association. So that's our provincial regulatory body for cycling. I was there for a number of years. And just before that period of time, my wife, just after our first, was diagnosed with leukemia, which is like, wow, we have 1 year anniversary of our marriage. And it's like, happy anniversary, you have cancer. So cancer has always been near and dear to me and a passion for me in terms of fundraising and making a difference for people who are diagnosed with cancer. And then back in 2007, some folks from the Princess Margaret Foundation reached out to me and said, Steve, we want to put on a bike ride. And we know that you're a bike rider and that you have a connection to cancer. And can you help us launch this new event? So I said, absolutely. So that was back in 2006. And here we are 18 years later with Canada's most successful athletic fundraiser.
And not just most successful athletic fundraiser, but several of the most successful fundraisers that are out there, Steve. So when you joined Princess Margaret, really the portfolio was fairly small. It was a walk and a ride, which is what a lot of nonprofits, 15 years ago, that's what it looked like, right? Kind of one tentpole program. But today, y'all have grown to 8 programs, so 5 of which are in the top 30 that I mentioned earlier, but to a total of 8 programs. So can you talk a little bit about what sparked that expansion? How'd you decide what new events to add? What did that look like?
Yeah, we had the walk when I joined. It was about 3 years old when I joined. It was called the Weekend to End Breast Cancer, modeled after the Avon 3-day walk somewhat. And then we put on the bike ride, which I was hired to put on. And so I'm proudly one of the co-founders of the Ride to Conquer Cancer. And so we had this event for breast cancer, 95% participants were women. And then we had the bike ride, which was about 60-40 male, female. And we said, you know what? Men need to do a better job at giving back. And they're donating, but are they actually participating? So we looked around at different events and sort of the blue space. And we are from Canada. So of course we had to think about hockey. And instead of doing an ice hockey, which is, it limits your, the ability for people to participate. So we decided to launch a road hockey or a street hockey event. So in 2011, we launched Road Hockey to Conquer Cancer and raised in the first year $2.5 million. And we've raised like $33 million since the inception of that event. And then over time, we added another walk called the Journey to Conquer Cancer, which is more community focused. And then a niche bike ride up sort of in Northern Ontario. And that ride, not a race, is called Northern Pass to Conquer Cancer. So those are the 4 or 5 signatures that all made it in the top 30 this year. And then last year we looked around again and we looked at the second fastest growing sport in Canada. It's cricket. And the second largest sport in the entire world is cricket. We're like, wow, we got to do something to inspire that community to support our work. So we launched Cricket to Conquer Cancer last year. The first event is going to be happening next month. So we're really excited about that. And Marcie, I tell you, like I was connecting with, I was selling a piece of furniture on Facebook Marketplace. And this guy came to my house, and he was his background was obviously South Asian, and he asked me what I did. I told him I'm a fundraiser for Princess Margaret. He said, "I never heard of you guys," and I said, "Well, we're pretty big in terms of cancer research," and he said, "How can I help?" I said, "Well, we just launched this event called Cricket to Conquer Cancer." He said, "Cricket? Oh my gosh, I love cricket. I want to, how do I play? How do I get involved? My family's been touched by cancer. I want to get involved." So we feel like we're onto something with this new initiative, Cricket to Conquer Cancer.
And I'm sure there's some similarities to road hockey, at least in terms of event execution, that sets it up to kind of be I know you've coined the term R&D, rip off and duplicate. You're kind of doing that to yourself in a really interesting way.
You are so right. R&D. I'm glad that term resonated with folks at the Peer-to-Peer Forum conference earlier this year. But yeah, we took our road hockey, and how do we like cricketize, if that's a word, cricketize, that event. And so we're not playing cricket on these big, large open fields that you might have seen on TV. We're keeping it contained in small, sort of fenced off areas. And it's just going to be this incredible sort of festival of cricket. But number one, we're raising money for cancer. Number two, we're playing cricket. And that's always our philosophy. We're fundraisers first.
I love it. Well, I think sometimes when people are hesitant to expand their portfolio, it's because of the complexity, right? The battle for internal resources, this fear of donor fatigue, or even cannibalizing across events. So with that great opportunity, there's challenges that you have to be thoughtful with. So how have y'all navigated some things like that as you've added more and more to the portfolio?
It's a great question, Marcie, because I was one of those people saying, "Oh man, I don't want to add one more event. Like if we just had one event, then we're going to drive everybody to our one main event." But not everyone wants to ride their bike for 200 plus kilometers or walk, a half marathon. So over time, we've realized that people are actually crossing over between our events. In fact, the stats are really cool. So we look at the lifetime value of our supporters, and if someone does two events, their lifetime value goes up by a factor of 3. If they support 3 events, their lifetime value goes up by 7. And if they support 4 events or programs at Princess Margaret, their lifetime value goes up by a factor of 14. So we're like, why should we make decisions for people on our own? Why don't we let them make a decision? So if we give them the opportunity to support us in other ways, then let's let them choose. And so we did, and we're seeing that people are crossing over. In fact, we use our events as catcher feeder system. So maybe they've done our Ride to Conquer Cancer for 10 years, and they're like, "Nah, I'm a little tired of that event, but I still want to support Princess Margaret." Well, we have the Northern Pass bike ride. So they go up and do that event. Or people who do the Northern Pass bike ride are like, I want to go to the Super Bowl of bike rides. I want to come down and do the Ride to Conquer Cancer. And so we see the crossover between our bike rides, between our walks. And now we're seeing some of our road hockey teams deciding to try cricket. And it's a really great thing. So we go to all of so we have, and this applies to, foundations like ours that are a little bit more regional, but it could also apply to national organizations where we go to our big supporters like the Deloittes and the KPMGs and the EYs and the big banks that we have here in Canada. And we say, "Hey, you're a great supporter in our bike ride. Does anyone play cricket in your organization that maybe doesn't want to ride a bike?" And they said, "Actually, yeah, we've got someone over in this area of our company, and why don't I introduce you?" And then we have a cricket team, or maybe 2, to layer on top of their support behind the bike ride or the walk or whatever they're already doing. So we've really used our relationships to our advantage to help inspire other people within the organization to double down on their support for Princess Margaret.
I love just the way of approaching that conversation, because I think, again, a fear that people have, I know I've heard it in my career, is we don't want to ask too much. We don't want to keep going back to the quote unquote, the same well. But I think to your point, you're effectively making a decision for someone. And I often say, if somebody is staunchly in the ride camp and you ask them to do something else, the outcomes, they might say, "No, I love the ride." Well, then they've just confirmed that they like what they're doing. They might say, "Actually, this other opportunity is a better fit for me." And then you've plugged them in somewhere that really aligns with their values. In a dream world, they're saying, "I'll do both." The chances of them saying, "How dare you ask me to do more for this cause? I'm never doing anything again," I don't have the data, but I just think the slim to none, but we let that fear stop us sometimes from kind of going to somebody and saying, we're launching something new. Who do you know that could help us? Or do you have somebody in your company?
So true. And I'm a convert now. I mean, there's still a point where you don't want to overdo it. We're exploring things now. Like, so when Taylor Swift was in Toronto last year for, I think she did like, I don't know, 6 or 8 concerts. It was like getting tickets was next to impossible. But we got to hold up a couple of tickets and we launched a sweepstakes and we built a nice little package around this. And we ended up raising $1 million in 3 weeks because everyone wanted to see Taylor Swift. But we reached out to our existing community of riders, walkers, lottery supporters. Like we run a healthcare lottery at Princess Margaret, and so we reached out to those people, and they're like, "Oh my God, another way to support Princess Margaret!" And yes, I would love to go see Taylor Swift, and so we raised another bunch of money through another channel using our existing supporter base and just offering to them, not forcing them, but just offering it to them, and I think they appreciated that.
Now, were Americans eligible for that? Because I did not get that email, Steve. I would have loved to have won some Taylor Swift tickets.
Okay, next time, Marcie, you'll be on our list.
Next time I'm on the list. So what about from a branding perspective? Because I think often you want each of these events to have a little bit of a different personality. Obviously, a cycling event's going to be very different from a walk, but you still want to have that branding and that consistency. So how are you navigating that and kind of striking that balance among this wide variety of programs?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, but I think we're really getting into a good place for that to make sure that each brand's personality comes out, and we add some fun and flavor to the bike ride. Or in fact, for cricket, we hired an agency that specializes in ethnic marketing to make sure that we're being authentic. And we have a subject matter expert on our team who's amazing, and she is able to connect with the community and inspire and help support us in terms of how when we communicate to that community. So we make sure that our role models and our marketing speaks to the audience that we're trying to inspire. And then at Princess Margaret, we've just launched this campaign called Carry the Fire. And it's our opportunity to inspire hope, perseverance, and that connectivity between Princess Margaret, Carry the Fire, and then our events and all of our programs so that people can participate in our events and carry the fire year after year after year in pursuit of creating a world free from the fear of cancer. And so when you have this master brand of Carry the Fire and Princess Margaret, and that's weaved into everything that we do, but then making sure that each event, each peer-to-peer fundraising event has their own personality. It's really starting to play out well for us so that people know Princess Margaret stands for compassionate care, incredible research, and premium events. We use NPS scores. I don't know if that's something that a lot of your peer-to-peer colleagues use, but we really use those NPS scores to get a gauge of how people feel about our events.
NPS, the promoter score.
Net Promoter Score, yeah.
Net Promoter Score. I was like, what does the N stand for?
Yeah.
The Net Promoter Score. Yes, I think a lot of organizations probably do that. And I think the other piece, I know you've shared some of the marketing collateral. I think sometimes organizations get hung up on putting personality in their logo, which sometimes it's like the logo can be very consistent to program and still not erase the personality of your event. You can have something, y'all have a very clear kind of logo structure and branding structure that you use where if you were looking at them side by side, there's some cohesion, even if you're still maintaining the personality. And I think that's one of the things I really admired about kind of your suite of programs.
Yeah. And we've moved to that place where all the brands look and feel similar, but distinct in their own way. And we typically have a celebratory person involved. So we have in our walk, we have three women who are celebrating. In our ride, we have androgynous Pat, holding the bike over their head, and we always have somebody celebrating because that's what we're here to do. Sometimes we're celebrating people who are no longer with us, and often and more we're celebrating people who have survived or who are thriving with their cancer.
That's great. That's great. Now you have a fairly large team when it comes to managing all these programs. And I think one thing I think a lot of people sometimes struggle with is kind of those internal turf wars, whether it's for resources, whether it's for budgets, of where are we prioritizing our energies, even kind of where are we aligning some of the sponsors to be engaged or even donors connected. How do you, as kind of the leader of the team, navigate that and really foster collaboration instead of competition?
Yeah, well, I'm sure that's a tricky one for all organizations. I think we've done a really good job, especially in the last 6 years. Um, so 6 years ago, we actually had events in three different departments in the organization, and it was very competitive. Sometimes competition isn't a bad thing, but it can become unhealthy. And so 6 years ago, we amalgamated all of our events under one umbrella. And somehow they selected me to be the person in charge of all the peer-to-peer events, and we've got just an unbelievable team at the foundation, across the entire foundation, but in particular our events team. So we have four directors, and each one's responsible for two different peer-to-peer events, and the collaboration between each other. So we're learning from each other, like what's the best way to engage with honorary chairs or team captains, or if we're doing a matching campaign, what's the best way? And so we learn from each other, and we have a shared goal for our team, which ladders up to the whole foundation's goals. And so that's one of the ways that I think we've come to a place where we really are collaborative. But then our board, it starts from the board, who participate in many of our events. Our senior leadership team, they support and participate in many events. In fact, in our performance reviews for all of our staff at the foundation, we have it weaved into their objectives and key results that they should participate or volunteer at one of our events. So everybody comes and takes part in the magic. We call our events the physical manifestation of our brand. And when people come and they get to feel and taste and connect with the people who we are supporting and supporting us, it's pretty magical. So I think when you create that ecosystem, it helps mitigate some of those challenges that I know a lot of organizations have, and we're not immune to some of those as well.
It probably helps. The Canada Nice aspect probably helps everyone play well in the sandbox together. Or is that all a rumor? Is that just an urban legend?
I like to think that we're pretty collaborative and we're cordial. But I mean, I know I'm pretty competitive, so I was really happy that we had 5 events in the top 30, and we were pumping that up.
I love it. Now, if we have people that are listening today thinking, we really are in a position to grow, to add something new to the mix, whether it's they're trying to reach a new audience or a brand new type of event, what advice would you give to them about starting something new? Or even if they're not in charge, how do they make that case to their leadership for it being time to start something new?
Well, like we mentioned before, the R&D aspect of things. So you're doing your research and development, and also rip off and duplicate. So look around the world, and we're always scouring the world to see what's resonating, what's successful. And hey, we've had a lot of failures along the way. One of the main things is rewarding risk, right? So highlighting people who have tried something and maybe it didn't work out, but you'll learn something. So you never actually lose anything. You always gain wisdom from trying things. One of the things that actually, I think it was from the peer-to-peer forum in one of the sessions, I had this epiphany, and I was riffing off of someone. I can't remember who it was, but they were creating like a fundraising award amongst their team, but they were also awarding people who were trying things and maybe not succeeding. So I'm creating this. It's going to be like a baseball themed award for our team, and it's going to be the home run and the biggest swing. And maybe it was a swing and a miss, but I want to celebrate that because we're trying, and at least we're trying new things. And the other part of that, the answer to your question is, like, I have some teammates coming in to my office and saying, "Steve, I've got this great idea." And it's, I remember when we started a gaming program years and years ago, before gaming was really a thing. And he said, "Steve, we got to do this gaming thing. It's going to be the next thing." And I'm like, "No, my kid plays games. Like, there's no way we can figure out a way to raise money on it." And so he went away. He took it as a challenge. Like, I wasn't saying no. I was like, "Get me some more information." So then he came back to my office and he said, "Here's an example. Here's what we can do." And I'm like, got my attention. And then we roughed out a business plan and we launched Quest to Conquer Cancer, which raises like $500,000 to $600,000 a year for us. And so you have to instill the ability for people to look around and bring new ideas forward and make them feel comfortable in doing that. And so I think we've created that culture, from even before I was at the Princess Margaret, like 19 years ago. There's always been a culture of innovation, and that continues to this day.
I think it's also important to remember that sometimes events will have a shelf life, and that's okay. I remember there was a very wise woman, Betty Ross, who worked at the MS Society, the National MS Society in the U.S., and they had a fairly robust portfolio, and they had launched a new mud run event. It's kind of one of those obstacle races. And she said, I know this is not going to have the same longevity as our walk program that's been around for 30 years, but this is really popular right now. And so we're going to capitalize on that, make as much money as we can for this mission while this activity is popular, and then we'll move on to something else. And I had that similar conversation with someone recently about the idea of pickleball. Pickleball sweeping the world. It may not be the hot peer-to-peer activity forever, but maybe you run a program for 3 or 4 years and raise several million that you wouldn't have raised otherwise. And I think that idea of risk and knowing that it may not always be a forever program. It may be a 4 or 5 year program that runs its course and raises a lot while it can.
Yeah, and we've tried, and we usually give at least a 3-year chance for a program to succeed, and if not, then we'll shelve it and try something else. But it's so true, and we've looked at some of those programs, but we've also gone back to, like, I was doing the math on the top 30, and I think 50% of them are walks. Walks are always solid, right? So, you got to continually invest and keep them fresh and keep people engaged, because people will show up if you provide a great engagement opportunity for them for your mission.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Steve, I imagine there are people sitting there going, where can I learn more about what Princess Margaret is doing? Maybe I need to come, see one of these events and, in your words, rip off and duplicate. Where can they find out more information or get involved with some of your campaigns?
Well, of course, we'd love for anyone to come up and visit us. Our Ride to Conquer Cancer is happening this June 8th, 9th. But there's all the events are conquercancer.ca. So cricket to conquercancer.ca, ride to conquercancer.ca. You can look up Carry the Fire, our new campaign, or the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation, and you'll learn everything you need to know about Princess Margaret, all of our events and ways to support.
That's fantastic. Well, Steve, I always learn so much talking with you. Again, we were so honored to be able to recognize Princess Margaret as the Organization of the Year just earlier this year, and look forward to watching how your programs grow and what your 9th peer-to-peer program is going to be. I'm sure there'll be something in the mix down the line. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all your insights.
Well, thank you, Marcie. I'm a longtime listener of your podcast. I really appreciate everybody on there. There's always something to learn, and hopefully everyone has something to take away from our connection today. So thank you.
Love it. I feel like it's a Sleepless in Seattle where they go, longtime listener, first time caller. So, all right. Yeah. Thank you, Steve.
The P2P Soap Box is produced in partnership with True Story FM. Engineering by Pete Wright. Music this week is by Jimit. If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, we hope you'll consider doing just that for our show. But the best thing that you can do to support the P2P Soap Box is simply to share the show with a friend or colleague. Thank you for listening.